Hello again. Welcome back to another week. This week my guest is somewhat different, or should I say a little different, crossing the boundaries between graphic design, fine art and photography. His work poses the question in your head every time you look at an image: what is it that I'm looking at? And whilst you may never actually know, all his images have an ethereal quality, really, that somehow relaxes you. Maarten Rots. Maarten is a Dutch artist born in 1982, working with photography as his medium. His photographs reveal abstract qualities that can be found in everyday life, often with architecture as a prominent ingredient and a strong focus on composition, texture and definitely colour. Upon receiving his BFA from the audiovisual department at the Gerrit Rietveld Academie in Amsterdam in 2010, his main focus was on video, as well as working with found footage such as slides and Super 8 film that he found on the streets of Amsterdam around him. At the time, his short films were screened at numerous film festivals around the world, frequently nominated and often awarded. By 2015, still photography, however, had become his preferred medium, and he started self-publishing March and Rock, a magazine that we'll touch on during the interview. Rots travels Europe with a camper van, which he has decked out, I believe, himself, to uncover abstract images in daily surroundings, mostly dealing with the effects of light and shadow on textured architectural objects, and often provides a minimal sense of scale, which leads to an image that reveals ultimately the abstract in the mundane. The resulting photographs often lean towards graphic imagery and are commonly confused for paintings or drawings upon first look. Equality is something that he looks for deliberately in his compositions, and which he emphasizes by printing on matte, textured paper. Please join me in welcoming Maarten Rots to your screens. There he is, surrounded by colour. Maarten, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Charlie.
Great to meet you, actually. You know, we've conversed a number of times over social and commented on photographs, and now I see the man himself in his functional studio, not in your camper van.
No, unfortunately, that's not the case at the moment. It's, I mean, we can use it in the Netherlands right now, but yeah, we're back in the Netherlands for now, for as long as it has to be. Yeah, it's, as everybody has a situation, I've just decided, okay, this is it, and we'll just keep on going over here. Slightly different than I'm used to, but still having a lot of fun and yeah, discovering new stuff. So it's fine. Yeah.
Probably discovering more of your homeland than ever before.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was like when we just got back, because we really got back like a day before the lockdown went effective over here. So just right in time, and yeah, then all of a sudden I couldn't do what I used to do. Well, for the past few years, I just go outside and take photos of interesting situations, and yeah, I couldn't do that anymore. And I could have walked the street, but I didn't really feel like doing that. And yeah, then I just started to take photographs inside the house, and it was an interesting experience. It was really discovering the place that I know really well in a different way, because I started to take time to look at things. Normally you just accept things for what they are because they have a function, and that's the way you're dealing with your surroundings. And now they also became a subject for my photographs. So it's yeah, it's been interesting to look at it in that different way. So,
yeah, I can well imagine. The one thing that I noticed, and we'll show some of them in the conversation in a little bit, but the one thing I noticed about your house when I was looking at those pictures throughout lockdown was the amount of colour you had in it, and I've sort of realised that my own house actually is quite white, as you can kind of see from the background.
Yeah, it's a lucky coincidence indeed. Yeah, it's just, and it's also depending on the hour of the day. I mean, there's most of the walls are white actually, but then yeah, depending on the time of the day, the light may really change the color of of the walls, of course, as you probably know.
Yeah.
The blue hour, the golden hour, those kind of things. So and then it just became a game of finding more and more, and just keep on. But yeah, there's a couple of walls and ceilings that have a different color than you would expect in most houses. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, definitely, it was definitely evident in some of your pictures as that sort of time progressed, and it's interesting to hear that you're sort of still there, still doing it a little bit, and obviously you've been practicing, or rather, should I say, experimenting with your projection work, which you've been putting on Instagram recently too, which shows another side to Maarten Rots, sort of graphic design, visual artist, which I look forward to touching on as we go through. So I thought what would be a great place to start, really. I mean, I was reading up on your sort of history and how you spent a long time studying. You did a graphic design degree, which makes obviously a lot of sense. Seeing your work, and then you spent some very interesting time at the European Exchange Academy in Berlin, which I was reading up about, and it seems to be, at least from what I was reading, that was kind of a turning point a little bit for you and your work. Would you just give us sort of 2 minutes on that before we delve into sort of seeing some of your, what I would classify really as your early stuff, because we see a kind of a curve of work which has definitely developed over the last 5 years, I feel. But that time in Berlin was very sort of grounding for you, and just helped you discover who you really were.
Yeah, it was so the European Exchange Academy is a summer academy of about 5.5 weeks. So it's rather short actually, but very intense, because you're with a group of international students. I was still studying. I was going into my final year. So it's in the summer break between 2 years. It was set up by one of the teachers from my academy, but it was worldwide. Students from all over the world came to take part in it. And for those 5.5 weeks, you're just making new work in a very focused way. Like, there's no distractions. There's just you and the other people that are working on their stuff. So it really, when you have a situation like that, especially when you're in your studies still, you cannot really escape the point where everything becomes too much, and you really have to figure out, okay, is this really what I want, and if so, why, and how. And of course, most of those answers you cannot really give, but at least, well, I really found out, okay, this is definitely what I want to do. I really had like a breakdown, like, okay, what the hell am I doing? And then soon realized that this is what I really wanted. And that was also the time that I started to work with video more.
Yeah.
So I was filming quite a bit over there, and I always liked working with my surroundings. So what I would just bump into, be it physical stuff, but also the materials that I physically used in my work, but also filming, and well, not really photographing actually. I used photography to document certain things, but not really as an end medium, more as a means to document what I did. But video I did a lot. So I was walking around this area a lot. It's an old tuberculosis clinic built in the early 1900s, end of the 1800s. And all through the years it's been used as a hospital for various things. Also during the wars, soldiers used to go there. And then after the Second World War ended, the Russians took it over. And it's an area with huge buildings, and all of them are completely ruins now, except for one of them, which is still a hospital. And then in front of that one is another one that was not as bad as the other ones were, and that was our academy building. So when you have an area like that, it's like, urban explorers' paradise, pretty much. So there's a lot of people also sneaking, because it's not really allowed to go there. So there's people doing all kinds of stuff there. So there was interesting things happening around me as well. So I was just walking around with my video camera a lot and trying to capture interesting things. And that's where I made one of the videos that was, one of those, like you mentioned in the beginning, I when I just graduated, I had a lot of film festivals that showed my short films, and one of those films is actually made during this period in Berlin, or just below Berlin, south of Berlin actually. But and that really gave me extra confidence in that I could keep doing this. It's always, of course, the confidence to be an artist and to do what you really want to do has to come from inside. But sometimes it's really good to have these outside confirmation of people also agreeing or enjoying what you are doing. And that was one of the first times that really happened. So yeah, it was a very important period for me to go to the European Exchange Academy. And after I actually did it as a student, 2 years later, I started also becoming part as one of the staff members and teaching. Well, we would say advising, actually, not teaching. So it was really one-on-one talks, or maybe one-on-two talks, but like very focused and not teaching, not explaining how you do something, but more discussing projects, discussing choices, and yeah, very good times.
Cool.
Yeah.
So the success, you're a success story, shall we say, because you're now going back to help educate them or others that go there. So that's good to know that you went, you found yourself, and effectively 10 years later, you are a product of their education, so to speak, or their methodology, because
Yeah.
that forced you down this route to work really hard. So at what point was it that you chose, if you will, photography? Because you played with, because you studied graphic design and fine art. We've mentioned drawing and obviously you've mentioned film, but you've sort of fallen into this space, which sort of starts, at least from what I can kind of see, in 2015 with your people imagery, which is where you're starting to find your feet. At what point was it that you were like, no, it's got to be one of these?
It's one of those actually.
Oh.
Well, it's a Canon camera. Um, it was kind of a coincidence actually because I was used to filming, so I would go out on the street with a rather large video camera, tape-based camera, and that just it broke. Yeah, as things do, at some point they just break down, and for a while I didn't use it, and so I didn't make any new video work. But I did feel that I wanted to do photography again as well, and I wanted to film, of course, again.
Yeah.
And then I decided, okay, if I'm gonna do both, it would be much more practical if I have a smaller machine that can do both of these things. So I bought a DSLR that was okay for filming as well. And then, I don't know exactly how it happened, but I just started to take pictures more and more and more, and made less and less video works. And yeah, I just felt that it's a different way of working. If you film something, especially if you film what's already happening in front of you, you come into the situation that's already happening. So it's like you fall in the middle of a scene and then you start filming it. So you miss the beginning, and you don't know how it's going to end. You may not have the ideal position, all those kinds of things, but you film like a lot of time. Well, at least it's not just one frame, so you have much more context. And to use that material and tell a story, you already changed the story that actually happened because some information is missing, and so you have to become quite smart about it. And then what I figured out with photography is you take one snapshot, you snap one shot, and that already, if you do it well, can tell a story, or at least give people the idea that there is a story, and they start filling it in their heads. So it's a very different way of working, and I realized that was because also when you film, you have a lot of material, and you have to. It takes a lot of time to make one, even short video.
Yeah.
But if you take one photograph that works really well, then it's there. You do a little bit of contrast work, maybe you crop it a little bit, and you're done. So it's a very different way of working, even though you can do it with the same machine. So yeah, I also realized it's quite practical actually to take photographs. So I think that was also part of it. So in the beginning, I really still had this narrative. I wanted to be kind of narrative with what I did with my photography. So when I did my very first magazine, it was quite it was really circling around the theme in the sense that you could almost tell it was almost like going through a movie, but then with just a few frames from each scene, something like that. And I really used that way of editing also. When I went and made the magazine, I really thought about, okay, how does this image go into the next scene? What does it need? And is it going to be like some kind of slowing down, or is it going to be a very direct, logical next image? Those kinds of things you think about. And I slowly, I started to let that go, that way of thinking, and it became more about single images, I think. And then even then you start thinking about, okay, what kind of theme am I working in, or how do they work together, and is there some kind of coherence between the images? So I just noticed that photography was a very different way of working, and I really enjoyed it. So, and that's one thing I always find very important if you do this kind of work. And well, you're never sure how much money you're going to make. Usually it's not a lot, but you're putting a lot of time in. So if you can, just make it fun, or at least make it something that you enjoy. And it would be something that's maybe not fun in the traditional sense that it makes you happy, but at least it gives you some sense of importance, not being important yourself, but what you do is important. And maybe it's just for yourself important, maybe it can also be important for others. But yeah, if you put all this time of your life in something that you believe in, then for me it's important that it's also fun. And I had a lot of fun with taking photographs. So it just naturally kept it going, and then it slowly developed. As you know, I think everybody understands this, that it slowly develops, it changes. If I look at what I did 5 years ago and what I do now, there's a big difference. I can still see the way I was looking or what I was trying to do back then, and I do it differently now. But I couldn't have told you 5 years ago that I would be doing this, what I'm doing right now.
No. I mean, I think that the interesting thing is it's control. You know, you the way you videoed, you'd go out and sort of shoot what you saw. And as you say, you miss the beginning, you miss the end. And then you have to go home and compile this enormous amount of content together into something cohesive and logical in your mind. Whereas you go out with your camera and you are the gentle observer. You're out there, you have ultimate control. You creep around, you spot something, you go and shoot it, and it pleases you. You get that spark of excitement for a minute, and it develops. You don't need all the other baggage, if you will, that goes with video. So I can kind of see why you went that direction, and sort of having researched and seen a bit of how you work on the internet, and obviously looking at your imagery, you can see how it pleases you as a person. And interesting you say about kind of what you were like 5 years ago. So let's go take a look. I've picked out 3 shots, or between us we have, of Amsterdam in 2015, and then a couple of other shots which I term as glass. Your kind of glass work, so to speak. Should we call it your glass street work? Because you're doing glass homework, shall we call it? So the Amsterdam 2015, I've put it up on screen now. I'm not sure what it is. I think it's a power station behind a dirty window. But just give us some kind of context how these types of images developed, and some explanation.
I'm really quickly also gonna pull it up for myself, so I know exactly what the image is, but it's always good to take a look at what you're talking about while you're talking about it. And so this photograph, I took it in 2015, which I wasn't photographing for a really long, I wasn't focusing on photography for a really long time back then. So I bought this photo camera in 2014. And I noticed, okay, I really like what I'm doing, but I'm not where I want to be with what I do yet. So I came up with a project. I like coming up with little projects for myself.
Yeah.
And in this case, I said, okay, I'm going to work from one spot, and I'm going to have a 1 kilometer radius around it. And that's where I can work for a week. And that spot was a gallery where I had some different work, photographic works, but with found footage. And I asked them, do you have a week where I could just use the gallery in between shows and then maybe also have a short show afterwards? And they agreed, and we even found a sponsor who would print the photographs that I selected, which was great, because then I had proper prints for the final show. And I also had some pressure because I had to, well, get some pretty good images out there that I really wanted to show, that I would be proud of. Because I made the deal with myself, every day I had to pick one photograph that would be printed
Okay.
on this size, so it's 50 by 75 centimeters.
Okay, big then
And
as well, yeah.
that's
Ambitious.
rather large, yeah, and well, very nice prints also. So yeah, and it's also always tricky. If I would have done it again, I don't know if I would have picked the same images, but this one for sure. This was one of those photographs that really changed what I thought was possible and how I approach photography now, actually. So what you're looking at is it's just one single photograph. So there is no digital manipulation other than some contrast work, a little bit of straightening, and it is a reflection in a dirty window where you see the silhouette of some buildings that were in my back when I took the photo.
Okay.
But you're also looking through it. So that's a nice thing with glass. Glass is transparent and it reflects, but it also gets covered with dirt and stuff that's just flying around.
Yes, yeah.
So you get all these different layers, and if you use the camera in the right way, you can capture it in such a way that they all come together, and it becomes hard to figure out what's what. So actually, that bottom layer that you see, those orange-red squares,
Yes.
that's behind the window, actually. You wouldn't guess that if I didn't tell you. And maybe I should.
Okay, yeah.
But sometimes I think it's good to give some extra. Yeah, this is nice to know, I think. And then, of course, what I didn't realize taking this photograph is that it has all the primary colors and black and white.
Yeah.
Which I think makes it strong, just because those are such basic ingredients. And then the shapes are very. So yeah, it was a big surprise for me when I realized that this was possible. So after taking this photograph and also having the large print, because on your screen, even if you have a rather large screen, you will never see it as large as it will be when it's printed.
No.
Unless you print small, but these were going to be large. So it was that was also interesting that was the first time I had my own work printed in this size. So that was an interesting new way of seeing what I did, actually, and because then it becomes it obviously has a painterly quality. Most people think this is a painting when they first see it, and then on this paper in this size, it just that was a big game changer for me. So
do you think this was sort of you supplied this as very much your first image to show, and was this the shot that kind of flicked that switch almost in your mind?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I was already getting there. Of course, I mean, it didn't just happen all of a sudden.
Of course not. No.
This is one of those where I knew that I was looking for this, but I didn't know how to find it or where to find it. And when I found it, I don't know if I realized immediately when I found this situation and took the photograph that afterwards it would be such a big thing. But when I came back in the gallery where I would go to, of course, to look at the work, and because I worked there also at the gallery for that 1 week.
Okay.
And then when I saw it, then it happened. I was like, wow, this is. So what did I do? And then the nice thing is with digital photography, there's metadata, so you can see how zoomed in was I, and what kind of aperture was I using, and those kinds of things. And then of course I tried, because I was working within this area still for 2 more days. This wasn't on day 5 of the whole period. So I went back the next day to see if I could do it better again, and it was just I couldn't. It was really about that moment also, and not just the moment of me being there, naive and spontaneous, but the weather changed, the light was different.
Of course.
And I knew that I could try and get this picture, but if you know it, I don't know. That's not how it works for me. I have to just see it and then catch it instead of.
It's about the state of mind as well.
I guess so. Yeah.
And you have to get into the zone, the space, the headspace. I think when you're walking the street, I don't know, do you listen to music at the same time, or are you just in your own space?
Yeah, I'm completely. I don't notice much anymore. Of
Yeah, you
course,
see,
it
I
doesn't
think,
always happen, but during this project, I had so much time. I would start at like 7 in the morning and end by because I did it in the middle of the summer, and I think in the first week of June or something. So the days are really long, so you have all the time, and then also you become. I think I took this in the afternoon, so I'd been walking quite a lot already, and been looking very focused at everything around me. So you get really tired. That also adds to, it's not just the zone, but it's also how your brain becomes numb for certain things. And,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's almost like you've had a really bad night of sleep, and then things just appear a little bit different than you used to. And I think that it had that effect. But it was day 5, so it was quite exhausting. I mean, you can say, okay, well, how exhausting can it be walking around with a camera for 5 days? But just being focused all the time and trying to get the best you can get out of it is, yeah, it's quite exhausting.
of
But
course
then
it
it
is.
led to this. So.
But then it led to that precisely, and I mean, yeah, I'm putting a couple of other shots up now, which are the more glass ones, which again show multiple layers of where your head is going. You can start to see the sort of the Maarten or the Rots vision sort of pumping through here. This is the double slide that I shared with you.
With the
Uh,
red one and the blue one. Yeah.
Correct, yeah. And here again, you've got dirty windows, you've got reflections, and got what's behind and what's in front, and primary colours. Obviously, good use of division down the middle.
Yeah.
Were these part of the same series?
They came a little bit later, but they are in the same
Body.
development still. So these came after. Actually, the one on the left, the purple reddish one, is of a second edition of the same project that I.
Okay.
When I did that project, I decided this is great. I really like doing this, and if there's possibilities to do it again, let's see if I can find people and places where I can do it. So this was in the city of Tiel, which is a small town
Yeah.
in the southeast of the Netherlands ish, and yeah, same there. I was just walking the same area every day and trying to find interesting imagery. But still with that in my head, what I had the first time, and this was here I realized it when I found the situation. So because what I do a lot is just look back at what I've done in the past and try to figure out why does this work, how did I do it, and I don't make a list of it, I don't make notes, but there are somehow they're still in my head when I'm walking around. So I'm just a little bit more aware of what I should look for. And when I found this situation, I know, okay, this is now I have to do it. But then you know also what you have to do, so you become also more um, precise about it, and
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit afraid that maybe I do miss it still. Like this is a perfect situation, I have to do it now. So that was yeah, and then the other one is in Den Bosch, also in the south of the Netherlands. Just on a normal day, just I think it was right after just a few months after we bought our first camper van, and we would just go to different cities in the Netherlands for a day or two, and then yeah, if I really prefer the weather to be sunny, as you can really see on that one photograph.
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
walking around and trying to find stuff, because then you get these nice contrasts and extra shapes of colors of yeah. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, you can see very much that you like the sun and the strong colours here. I mean, this is, I think you can see very early kind of Maarten Holt's work, which is actually in very stark contrast to the people work that you shot, which here the work is much darker,
yeah,
still using the method that we've just been discussing, sort of through glass, what's behind you, what's in front of you, but it's um, much more a somber sort of set of work, probably more reflective, trying to capture emotions of people. Why did you sort of land in this method? And I mean, obviously, you wanted to try to shoot people, I assume, but more dark. Was it reflecting a moment in time?
Well, with the one on the right, I think it did a little bit. I was still making a magazine because what I do with March on Rock magazine is 4 times a year I make my own small magazine with recent work, and that was really in a time where I was struggling to get like get further, get ahead of myself, and just yeah, take that next step. And I couldn't really get there. So the one on the right, I think, unconsciously reflects that in a way. I
Okay.
was, of course, also simply looking for interesting elements and how to combine them in one shot, one composition. So it's always the intention wasn't to make a dark, mysterious photograph, but I think that is the outcome. And looking back, I was definitely having some struggles with my own stuff at that moment. Like, where am I going with this? But the one on the left is actually from that first project in Amsterdam.
Is
It's
it
also
really?
one of
Okay.
the shots that I had printed on a large size. So there it's more coincidental, I think. That's just yeah, again, playing around with the elements that I could find around me, and yeah, the light had to be perfect just to get the shot. Otherwise, I couldn't have gotten it. But I didn't know I had to be there at that time to get that photograph. So I'm
Of
not
course.
normally I don't really return to the same place to take a photograph again because I know the light is like a lot of landscape photographers do this logically because they want the light to be a certain way, and I totally get that. But for me, the fun is in walking around and just, well, I would say bumping into it, but that's not true because I know very well what I'm looking for. So it's not coincidental that I find it, but it is surprising. I never know what exactly I'm gonna find.
Yeah.
Uh, and that was with this particular photograph. Definitely, it was the case. It was so when I really started doing photography, very much in the beginning, I was really trying to photograph people on the streets, and I soon realized that that wasn't really for me.
Mm.
So I landed at this way of working, using reflections or silhouettes to still have human elements, human figures in my photographs, without really pointing the camera at them and having this.
Engagement.
You have to confront them, but it's more confronting for me actually because I don't know how to deal with these things. If you giving their consent before I'm doing it, I don't know because I do model work. Like I shoot models sometimes, just on a commercial basis, which is nothing to do with what you see right now. But then you have a model, and they know they're getting photographed, and you can tell
Exactly.
them
Yeah.
it's a completely different way of working. But
It
just people
is.
on the
Yeah.
streets, I don't like confrontations so much. So I found these kinds of ways to do it. Yeah, but I think the one on the left in these two photographs that you're showing now is already showing a lot of interest in how the shapes are and the composition. Yeah, how the frame is made up actually. So.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. And I think that no better way to bring in, no better point, sorry, to bring in then this shot from San Sebastian, which is you showed with me in 2016, which is absolutely where you can start to see you developing now. We've got a number of nice shots to show. I'd like to try to get through them within the hour. But this image shows exactly all of your graphic elements coming into play. You know, the colours, the perspective, the leading the eye into the image. You've got subtle shapes in there. You know, you've got a big shadow arrow that takes you over to the left, and you've got the golden triangle on the right. You know, and it's really very simple but very strong and striking. And yeah, this is obviously when you first started, I assume, in your camper traveling around
Yeah,
to countries. So
it's,
this is where you started to really find your feet.
yeah, yeah. It is in 2016. In the summer, we decided to make a longer road trip, and yeah, for me, it was of course an opportunity to photograph in places that I'd never been. And the goal was to go just along the French west coast, and then, well, we crossed the border to Spain. San Sebastian is really in the north of Spain.
Yeah.
So that's the southest we went. So the south, the most south.
Most south?
that we ended
Southest.
up. Yeah, this is just one of those moments also where I realized that this can be interesting too. And actually, this is what I find really interesting. But this is when I realized it, when I took this photograph. I know exactly how it went when I took it. I mean, it's not an interesting story, but I know my wife. We were already married then. She was just talking on the phone and walking around in circles a little bit. And we were going into the city actually. And I said, okay, I want to take a photograph here. She's really used to just walking around and doing her own things a little bit when I'm taking photographs. And we're always walking together. We really enjoy it together. And I stop every now and then, take some photographs. And then at some point I see her waving like, come on, follow me again. And then I would follow. But this time she was hanging around because she was making a phone call. So I took more time than I used to normally at a spot like this. And I'm happy I did, because then I realized that this was a much more interesting perspective to take the photograph of the city. Because I spotted the situations, I liked the colors, I liked the materials, I liked how the light was. But because I could take just a little bit more time, I realized that this was a more interesting way to photograph that situation. So, yeah.
Yeah, you can see that the shapes, and the way that you composed it, you're bringing lines in, and it's just very, very strong early work. It's clearly, kind of over the following years, you have developed into a very arresting kind of style. Obviously, you've got the pictures on the wall behind you. The ones I'm going to pop up now are from 2018. So we march on a couple of years now, and we can start to see consistency in your work. And here, these are from Corneliano and Mafra. And I chose these because I'm totally in love with the Corneliano one on the left. It's utterly beautiful, but these both complement each other marvelously well. Forgive me, but where is Corneliano? Is this in Italy?
Italy.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Italy. Yeah.
So these images here, tell us the story behind these. I mean, you're entering into the world of pastels and slightly different shapes.
Yeah, allowing more organic shapes into my photographs. Yeah, it was. It just happened. It wasn't a conscious choice, but I think unconsciously I was maybe ready or finished with only the straight angled stuff.
Yeah.
And I was allowing these in, and then because that's what happens when you start to understand something, you become better at it, and then it becomes. At some point, I don't know. It sounds weird maybe, but sometimes it feels like this becomes too easy, and I'm not trying to say that it is. Oh, look at me! I know so well what I'm doing, and it's easy now. But it's more like I don't. It's not so satisfying anymore because I see these things everywhere now, and I want to surprise myself. And it's so.
So you'd say maybe you're getting a little bored of shooting that particular style, and you need to step away from it.
Yeah.
Find a different.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's hard to describe it, but I think that covers it. Yeah, then you consciously or unconsciously, I think it's a mix of both. You start to allow other things in, and the more organic shapes. I think that was. It's just I couldn't really have done that also in certain places. In certain places you find these more than in other places. So you have to be in a place where you can find these, and that's interesting when you travel. It's always different. I mean, there's a lot of things that are similar in most places, But yeah, arcs like these, we don't really have those in the Netherlands. And if I go to, unless you go into a church, we don't really have those. So I'm not really used to having these shapes around. And yeah, so this was a new element that I really started to enjoy. And actually, when I was in Germany in 2017, I started taking photographs like these as well. And that was usually in older buildings, so in cathedrals or older buildings that were having these kinds of elements. And it could be an interesting part of the composition that I was trying to compose.
Yeah.
And then the one on the right in Mafra, that's something different. And that's still something different actually. For me, because this is a reflection in water, obviously. I think most people recognize that.
Small puddle.
But what I like so much about it, because these lines that you see are completely almost like they were drawn actually now. But of course, there were straight lines reflecting in slightly moving water, and I really like that as a way to get away from the strict straight lines, but still having them somehow in my photography.
Did you have your wife blow or put her foot in the water to get the ripples?
No, this was just the wind blowing. She wasn't there at that moment, actually. It's also this one I totally remember taking. It's with a lot of photographs, actually, I remember taking it when they end up in a magazine or on my website or something. I usually remember when it was, how I felt. But then I don't remember lots of very important stuff that most people do remember. So it's just I have a selective memory, I think.
You're the artist. You don't need to remember all the specifics, particularly. I mean, just on those two, I love the Corneliano one. This is a perfect example of a painting. In fact, without printing it, it looks like a painting.
Well, you know what's funny? I used that photograph as a starting point for this guy here, which is now actually it should be like this.
Oh wow, it is, yeah.
Can you see it?
Yes, yeah, very much.
So that's a stained glass object, I would say. It's not really a window, which is it's part of a project, a collaboration I did last year. It's about a year ago with a Dutch stained glass maker. I had the opportunity to work with a craftsman, with someone who was really good at doing something with their hands, and applying my way of working. It was a larger project, so it approached around 20, 24 artists to do something like this.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to work with someone who was working with glass, because I like glass in my photography. I like also how light and glass, how they work. I like the colors. So I ended up translating we really did it together, because as you saw, the colors are different. If you want exactly the same colors, that's not going to happen when you do stained glass, unless you are going to spend a whole lot of money on it. And of course, if you do something like this for the first time, it's better to keep it simple, and as far as you can keep something like this simple. And so that's some side note to this particular
That's nice.
photograph.
Another angle to the Rots fine art world, shall we say?
I really enjoy doing these things with different materials. So I always say I'm a visual artist and I work with photography, even though I'm mainly doing photography at the moment, because I also like doing these kinds of things. I'm actually working with spray paint at the moment as well. So there's these different things that I'm also doing.
Okay. Oh, well, you've got obviously a lot of pictures that you can use as a basis for starting points.
Yeah, that's definitely how I work also. Yeah.
So we'll see you doing graffiti soon, I'm sure. It's
really graffiti. It's working with spray paint, but it's not to do with graffiti at all. No.
More using it stylistically, shall we say?
Yeah. Actually, I have a few of them in the back here. But
we can't really see them.
But this is really very recent work. It's not very
Oh, okay,
fully
yeah.
developed yet. But is it good like this?
Yeah, it's good. Go back a bit. Yeah, perfect.
So
Yeah,
that's spray paint, and it's just it's many different colors, and it's not just one single color. If you look a bit closer, I don't know if you. So I
that's
use
good.
texture paint as well. So it's a new development.
That's good. I like that. That's very similar to the vibe that is in this the image from 2019, Krems an der Donau. So
Yeah,
the image that you showed with me here, that's very similar to that. So you can start to see what you're doing using slight shades to create a play in perspective. Again, this Crimson de Donau, this goes back to your Amsterdam image. You've got red, blue, yellow.
yeah.
You've got light, you've got shadow. You know, it's
Yeah, it's funny how that works because I never really chose for that, but it just keeps coming back, and I really can't help it. But it's always
it's
always there.
it's a winning combination, isn't it? Really, and I think that's definitely your underlying kind of color palette that you play
Yeah,
with. But seemingly yellows, I think, play quite a large have a large play in your work. I mean, even just looking behind you, actually, the predominancy of yellow is quite strong in your work.
yeah.
But
It has become actually. It was for a really long time. I never had any yellow in my photographs. I remember someone asking me like, because sometimes people see your photography, and because I try, well, I always sold my work whenever possible, and then people ask me, do you have something yellow because that would fit my window? No, I don't have any yellow photographs. That's years ago.
yeah,
And now, if I look at my catalog, that's really one of the most prominent colors at the moment, which
it's a
is
very
well,
positive
probably
color.
has to do.
It's a very
It
positive
probably
color.
has to do with the countries I travel to, but then it also has to do with my way of what I'm attracted to, and yeah,
Yeah, well, that's very true. I mean, the countries. Interestingly, there's an artist who shoots quite similar to yourself, who I've known for a while, called Natalie Christensen.
yeah,
She's turned Natalie
wonderful,
Santa Fe. You may know her, and
yeah,
I personally was in Santa Fe a year and a half ago to stay with a friend and met her. And the light in Santa Fe, you talk about the light and the yellow and the color. The light in Santa Fe is another world. I think if you were to get there, you'd have to catch a plane. I don't think you can drive. But if you were to get there, you would revel in it in a very big way. So put it on your bucket list to get
yeah.
there.
I would really love to go to the other side of the ocean one day and take some photographs there. Yeah, it would be interesting.
It would be, but although to be fair, your portfolio gets better and better by not getting on a plane and just by going in your camper van, and
Yeah,
even even staying in your own home. So we talked about scenes from home. So let's put a couple of those up on the screen, and here we've got effectively kind of two tones of yellow. You've got a wooden staircase, maybe, I'm not sure, and light bouncing through some water droplets onto the walls. Not sure, but this,
You're
if you can create this in your home, then maybe you don't need to go to Santa Fe.
yeah. It's definitely cheaper to stay here. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
how did you find this whole process in your home? Was it we touched on it earlier, but are you satisfied with the work that came out of it?
yeah. It was because so very technically, it's not my own home actually. It's for now it is because when we were traveling, we rented out our house and we couldn't go back to it. So we're staying with family now. But it's my mother-in-law's house, and this is I've known it for a really long time. My wife and I have been together for 18 years, so I really
Okay,
know this place very well. We come here frequently, so I know all the little corners and angles, and but I never thought about really taking photographs here. And sometimes I saw a situation that, well, this might come up and become a very interesting photograph one day, but I never did it. Because then you have different things on your head, and you have a different process going on, and you just don't do it. But now there was nothing else. And I just started to notice it more and more and more, just everywhere on the ceiling and the wall, just the effects of light during the day. And I would know by this time the light will probably do something like this, if the light would be the same as yesterday. And so I started to really realize what kind of things could happen during the day, and I started to notice it and keep an extra sharp eye out for it, and my camera next to me. And I was really surprised with how much I could find. And of course, at some point, it also becomes like it feels like you've covered it, or you've milked the cow, and all the milk is out. But it was a very interesting experience, especially because I never realized that the changing of light has such an influence on how the space changes during the day. You know this, of course, if you talk about it, it's like, yeah, of course it does. But if you really start to look for it and keep your eyes open, you will, find very, like the photograph on the right is very much a close-up, as you can see from the drip that is on the lower side of the part of the photograph.
Yeah.
So it becomes also about very small little things that also they only live for like a minute and then they're gone again, or they're completely different. And especially by the end or the beginning of the day, when the sun is low, the light is also changing very quickly because the sun is moving really rather quickly. So I think sometimes they are just there for, sometimes I didn't have time to take my photo camera and take a shot actually. So I would wait for the next day to do it. So this is one of the first times that I really took the time to go back to a situation and take a photograph again on a different part of the day. And that's something I think I will take along when I am able to go outside again and take photographs, to take more time to really maybe revisit the scene. If I know that all the elements are there, it's I've started to appreciate it in a different way. Before it was, like I said, I really like to be surprised, like knowing there should be something there and then finding it, but not to plan it, not to go plan ahead. And I still won't plan it ahead, but I think I will maybe go back and try and see if I can get it out of that situation.
I think that's interesting to hear you say that, because obviously now, having spent this time at home, not being allowed to move, you've started to kind of maybe go back to your graphic design roots, because obviously the next thing that's come from scenes from home is your projection work, which again is in your home, and you're taking light, your favorite and every photographer's favorite tool, shall we call it, color and glass, which I'm assuming must come from some of these stained glass behind you. But
I started with 3 little parts that I had left from this project, and that was all I had. That were the only ingredients I had, so that was what I started with. And of course, then I realized I need more. I need more colors.
Yeah.
So I contacted the guy I work with to make these guys, and he offered me some just leftover pieces that they were gonna throw out. I could just go through all the colors, so I took a lot with me, and now it's just experimenting. It's really trying out stuff. So it's just I have some of the old slide projectors and the overhead projectors and just those kinds of projectors. Nothing special. And the white wall, which is textured, which is also always coming back in pretty much any of my photographs. There's this texture. I really like the texture. So these elements are there, and now it's discovering it. So I'm just playing. It's really playing around. In that sense, it's similar to me walking around with a camera and finding stuff. That's also just I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I have some influence because I know how close I can get to a certain situation, how I can change how certain elements fall into the frame by moving around. So I use that kind of background experience that I did before, and I apply it to a very small situation. Now it's like a little corner like this. It's like that kind of size
Yeah,
is what I'm working in, and it's just
it's magnificent. I
trying.
think
It's fun. Yeah.
that's fantastic, really, isn't it? You know, you've gone from effectively Europe, shall we say, having Europe as your canvas,
Yeah.
down to your house or your in-laws' house, down to this tiny little corner in the house. And I put the first picture up, the projection shot that you shared with me, uh, and then I'll put the other two up that you most
Mhm.
recently put on Instagram, and these are astounding. I mean, you can see this is the culmination of everything we've talked about, and you know you're doing it in the corner of your house.
I was surprised myself as well. Like I knew what, of course, when I first put up the projectors and it just started playing. I was like, okay, there must be something here, but I really don't know what it is or how to do it. And then you just, yeah, you keep going, and then you just really like that orange little line there. I didn't know I could do that. So there's no photoshopping or anything. It's just this is the photograph. It's one flat layer. There's no. It's not even in the corner of it. It's just. I was like, wow, I could do this just with a couple of projectors and blocking some of the light and allowing light in, and then yeah, and this happened. I was like, wow. So then, of course, then I've become obsessed, and it's been rather hot here the past few weeks, and I do this in the basement, so it's pretty cold actually. So it's very nice to do this now. I don't,
Oh yeah,
even though I go to Portugal and Spain and Italy to take these photographs that I do, I try to not do it in the middle of the summer because it's way too hot. So I'm not a big fan of the heat. I love the sun, I love the light, but the heat is just too much. So doing this thing in the basement when it was like 30 degrees outside was a perfect
of course.
thing. But this is just the beginning. It's really I'm in the middle of the process and I'm really still discovering it. But I really feel yeah, there's something there for sure. It's gonna end up in a series. Yeah,
So I mean,
definitely.
I have to ask. I mean, when I saw the orange one, obviously I commented on it on Instagram. The orange one on the left of the pen
Yeah.
that I sent. It really awoke. I said at the beginning, you know, your images have an ethereal quality that relaxes you, and this excited me. This I felt was just so beautiful. It's kind of all the shades of the sun, heat, warmth, happiness. You know, they're very positive colours. Um, do you get, or have you have creating these images? Has it arisen as much excitement and as much of a sort of personal in you when you shoot these as those ones back in 2015 or the ones in San Sebastian or the ones you know on the walls behind you? Are you finding that excitement?
Yeah, yes, it's it's a constant excitement actually. And of course sometimes it's hard and because it doesn't work. Then you know that's with any creative task or even non-creative task. I think sometimes you just it doesn't work. And what I found is you have to keep doing it anyway. And then this moment comes like with this photograph. It's like wow, this is possible. I can do. I made this and I didn't know I was going to make it in an hour ago, and now I know how to do it. And then, but then, interesting thing is also if I take all the projectors away, I put them in a corner, take them again, and would try and build this again. I don't think I would succeed to get exactly this image again. So it's also, again, in the moment. Even though I control all the elements, which is not the case when I'm walking around outside, it still has this element of mindset. Like what kind of focus do you have at that moment? And because I think because I go in with some kind of naivety, but knowing what I'm looking for, I
Mm.
can still surprise myself. And it's that sense of surprise I think that really is that one extra layer that makes it possible to do this. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud now. Maybe it doesn't make sense at all what I'm saying, but for me, it does.
I think it does. I mean, we've seen the process. That's what your mind does. You step in, you start to conjure up ideas, you play, and that's how you work. I think you summarized it particularly nicely. Really, you know, when you're on the street, you're going on the hunt. You're observing, you're looking, you're playing, you're finding, and that's what you're doing here. You know, with these projections, you're not trying to create something to create it again and again and again. That's not in your nature. If you do create it again and again, you're going to take that image and turn it into something else. You're going to turn it into a stained glass window. You're going to turn it into a spray paint piece of work, or no doubt you'll find something else. You'll probably head down the screen printing avenue soon. You know, your work has so much potential for that. And should I say, I mean, you gave me the reference, David Carson, that was it, your reference for graphic design. I mean, you can see really, you can take the photographs that you've made and apply graphic design to them. You can go and take another medium. You know, right now you're shooting with photography, but you've done glass, you're doing spray paint. You can go and play with them and extend this out in all manner, because now you're starting to see, it's like the Matrix. You've entered your Matrix, and no matter what avenue you go down, you're going to start to create these amazing images. That's
definitely going for that. Yeah, thank you. That's a good outlook, and that's really what I hope, of course, and what I want. It makes me happy, and yeah, I really realize that indeed I can switch mediums and still have the same amount of fun and create similar kind of imagery but different. And there's a development. I think that's so you can grow, and not growing towards an endpoint, but like changing the way you do it, and challenging yourself.
Yeah.
Not as a challenge, but just you challenge yourself, so you become so making it a little bit harder for yourself every time, and see if you can still figure out how to deal with it. I think that's a little bit how it works. Yeah.
Nice, Maarten. We've had our hour. I think we could go on for much longer. We've got plenty more to talk about. We haven't even talked about your dog, but we have seen a wonderful timeline of images and heard how you've developed. It's been really, really beautiful talking to you. I really appreciated your time. Stay on the line and let's try and have a further chat. For those of you at home, please say thanks to Maarten for joining me. Amazing work. Keep on pushing. I expect to see at least another 2 or 3 different mediums behind you the next time we talk.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I'm going for it. Thank you very much, Jolly. It was a big pleasure being with you here. Really nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, Maarten, and we'll see you very soon.
Alrighty, cool.
Immense. Maarten's work is definitely something to behold. It should be on every person's wall. Of course, obviously accompanying my own work over that side. Can never get this right. That side. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's talk. Do come back and watch any more of the talks that I've had with photographers from around the world. Should you be interested in Maarten's work, all the links to his website and his March and Rock magazine are there in the bio for this talk. And should you be interested in purchasing any work, head to charliepinphoto.co.uk for mine and hopefully some of Maarten's in the future. As for now, take care and see you on the next one.